Hello and welcome to the Harrogate podcast with me, Andrew Gray. During the Harrogate podcast, it's my job to find out just what on earth is going on in this wonderful Harrogate bubble in which we live and work. Today I'm delighted that my guest is Geoff Dunning, and he's a fundraiser for the local fund for the Harrogate district. Geoff is certainly no stranger to being interviewed. Geoff, amongst other things, was the CEO of the well-known Road Haulage Association. He had a tenure of about 5.5 years running that very well-known lobbying group, if that's the right way to call it. He was a frequent guest on the Today programme and on other media channels. And today, I don't think I'm going to give him the John Humphrys Today programme interview. It's going to be a lot more gentle than that. I must say, I'm delighted that Geoff sort of reached out to me, to use an Americanism, using Twitter, how very modern, just a few weeks ago, because he wanted to talk about this very important new part of Harrogate life. Geoff, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Good to meet you, Andrew.
Thank you. So I've said, of course, that you were the CEO of the Road Haulage Association, but you're not here to talk about that. You're here to talk to me about the local fund for the Harrogate district. What on earth is it? Tell us all.
Well, basically the local fund for the Harrogate district's been established to help the very many small local community groups and charities which are finding funding very, very difficult. And we want to make it a little bit easier for them because we know there are serious social issues that need to be addressed in the town.
But surely, Geoff, we all know it. Harrogate is a salubrious, wealthy place. Everything here is wonderful. There's no crime, there's no poverty. What on earth do we need to be supporting a charity? I say, somewhat in jest.
Well, ironically, you're absolutely right. Harrogate is seen as a very affluent area, but unfortunately that hides a number of significant social problems. And the big foundation for the local fund for the Harrogate district is some research that identified 3 fundamental problems. Firstly, loneliness and social isolation. There is a significant number of people in the town who haven't got friends, who haven't got a family network, who are lonely and they need support and help. There are people in the town with significant both mental and physical health problems that aren't supported by publicly funded activities and need help from charities and community groups. And thirdly, there is significant inequality and hidden poverty. It's seen as very rich as Harrogate, but there are still people who are struggling to put meals on the table, to put clothes onto their children, and they need help.
I agree with all those things. It is a little known fact that Harrogate does have areas of deprivation. And I think there was a report which I think the local fund mentions, I think called Minding the Gap, which the churches put together some time ago, and it did highlight exactly those 3 areas to which you are talking to me about. In fact, this is the first time anyone from a charity has been on, so thank you for coming, Geoff. Now, explain to my listeners how the local fund works. Is it its own thing, or are there other parties involved?
Well, there are 3 partners in the local fund. Firstly, there's Harrogate Borough Council. Everybody's aware of the council, and it is important to emphasise that the council covers the whole of the Harrogate district, so it's not just the town. It extends up into the north to Massam, it extends to Pateley Bridge, it extends to Knaresborough, and obviously covers Ripon and Ripley in between. So it's for the whole of the Harrogate district, not just Harrogate town. So Harrogate Borough Council are one of the partners. The next one is Harrogate and Ripon Council of Voluntary Services, which many people will be aware of. It's a well-established organisation that helps to recruit and support the hundreds and thousands of volunteers across the district that do all sorts of work to help with the community. And then the third partner is called Two Ridings Community Foundation, which is one of a national network of foundations that is expert in managing charitable funds, and they are the people that will actually manage the fund and all of the donations that we are able to generate, and more important, all of the grants that go to the various different groups that need support.
So tell me more about those that have received or will receive monies. Who are they? Are they only organisations within or people within Harrogate district, which, as you say, is a huge area, so up to Massam, south of Harrogate, Boroughbridge, Knaresborough, Ripley, so on.
Yeah.
Who are the groups that this is targeted at? Who are you going to help?
Well, there's a variety of different groups that have already been given some support. In fact, a couple of months ago, there were about 20 organisations that received almost £40,000 in grants. And just to give you some examples, one was a coffee morning for vulnerable and lonely people in Boroughbridge. Another one was supporting the wages of staff at the food bank in Harrogate. The third was helping a youth club that supports lonely children in Kirby Malshead. And finally, there was a cookery group in Knaresborough which supports people with mental health problems and does fantastic work with people that are in very difficult circumstances. So there's some examples. The total number of groups that were supported was something like 20, but they're all there to help people that suffer from one or other of the three issues that I mentioned earlier, and they are doing work which is invaluable to the individuals that are affected by those circumstances.
Thank you. I'm sure those organisations are just delighted that the fund has come into place. Only in this last year or so, I think you've come to be formed. Incidentally, last night I was watching one of those TED videos on TED Talks, and the one that was recommended to me, which I was watching, was about the Harvard, I think it's research review or words to that effect, from Harvard University in the States. And essentially what they did was 75 years ago is that they found about 100 Harvard students, all male, I think they're probably all male back 75 years ago, and then they went to Boston, a very poor area of Boston, and found 100 sort of poorer kids, and they had tracked them during their lives, and they wanted to extrapolate from all this information over this 75-year study, which there was no other 75-year studies, what factors allowed people to live the longest. And I never would have guessed it in a million years what it was. It was actually the quality of people's relationships. It didn't really matter whether they were born poor, born rich, that didn't matter so much. It wasn't so much about their genes or their professions or whatever it would be. It was the quality of their friendships. And if they were in a marriage, for example, that wasn't a great one, that often would deteriorate their lifespan. But if they have good friends, good relationships, whether it's marriage or partners, etc., their quality of lives enhanced, as did their life expectancy. So it is really interesting that the fund is targeting sort of social isolation, which seems like a new idea, but is it really? I don't know. So in this last year, you guys have kindly helped distribute £39,000. What's the goal? Is it to distribute that sort of level every year, or where are we going with this? Is it going to be a far larger entity?
The primary objective is to build up a significant fund, about £2 million, and we can then use the interest and income from that fund to make substantially more grants in the future. The target really is to be able to make grants of about £100,000 a year rather than the £39,000 that we gave out last year. Now, having said that, as well as building up the endowment fund, we are looking to generate donations which we can then use to flow straight through. The money won't be invested, it will go out directly in grants, and that will supplement the total that we're able to give away to the worthy causes.
And who are the people that will be giving money to this fund? Is it, philanthropists? Is it businesses? A bit of both? Who do you expect to be giving money?
Well, the fund will obviously welcome donations from anybody.
I thought you'd say that.
And now, we said that very large donations from particularly wealthy individual philanthropists are obviously welcome, and there are mechanisms which would allow those individuals to have some say in how that money is used. As long as it's going to one of the three causes that we mentioned earlier, we could, for example, limit it just to Pateley Bridge if the individual making the donation wanted the money restricted in that way. Similarly, they could put the money into the general fund, but be involved in the process by which groups that are selected for support will be chosen. So there's a lot of flexibility there. We're also looking to local businesses to support us. either in donations to the fund itself or in donations which we can use for grants. And of course we have the Harrogate Lotto, the Harrogate District Lotto, which is generating something like £40,000 next year, and we'll be able to use that as well. So there's a lot of different ways in which we hope to put the fund together, and we're grateful to anybody that's willing to support us.
I bet. Now, Geoff, I've interviewed lots of people here on the Harrogate podcast, been very lucky to do so. And those that I've interviewed and people I meet around Harrogate in the business community always impress me with how philanthropic they are. Every business, it seems to me, has a pet project or two that they're supporting. The one that always comes to mind, although I've never met anyone from this business, it's a big one, it's CNG. I just went for a walk this lunchtime to get some food. I saw a Christmas tree sponsored by CNG. Well done CNG. I hear they're a fantastic company to work for, and they do a lot of good work. And obviously CNG get their names on things around here, and so they should. But if businesses are supporting the Harrogate District Local Fund, what will they get for it other than a sort of warm glow and they can tell their staff? Is there anything sort of tangible?
Yeah, I think there are a number of benefits really. The first and most obvious is that they are supporting local people that are in difficulty, and they can be confident that donations made in Harrogate stay in Harrogate and help people from Harrogate. I think that's quite an important point. The second is that we are very conscious of the fact that businesses receive lots and lots of approaches from lots and lots of different charities. By supporting the local fund for the Harrogate District, you know that you will be supporting a number of different charitable activities, and some of these charitable activities are so small that they don't really have the resources to go out approaching businesses. So you're serving people or supporting people that otherwise would find it very difficult. Obviously you've got the feel-good factor that you can use within your own business to encourage your staff to get involved and to be parts of the wider community. We are planning to run events for supporters and friends of the local fund, so there will be opportunities for networking as well. And of course, you'll be able to use the fact that you're supporting the local fund in your own promotional material to demonstrate that you are a good member of the community.
Seems obvious. A total no-brainer. Go out and support the fund. Some of the organisations in Harrogate have a sort of church bias, and I'm not hearing that here, and that's no criticism to church charities. I've been involved in one, the Harrogate Hub, myself, and I'm very proud to be involved in that. This seems to be sort of nothing to do with the churches. It seems sort of Harrogate Borough Council, they sort of keep all the charities together, one organisation, and then the two ridings that sounds like they know exactly what they're doing when it comes to matters of finance. It seems like a super sort of tripartite organisation. I've already got all the skills and knowledge from the get-go. Now, why are you here on this podcast talking to me, other than of course you want sponsorship? My understanding is I think you're looking for, is it friends of the local fund and ambassadors? If so, what do they do? It sounds pretty cool to me.
Well, one of the biggest challenges we face is that we are a new activity. The local fund for the Harrogate District was only launched this year, and we're obviously trying to get the message out as much as we possibly can. One way we can do that is by encouraging people and businesses to become friends of the local fund for the Harrogate District. There's no fee involved with that at all. It doesn't cost you anything. And what we hope that people will do is help to spread the word about the fund, possibly identify potential donors that would be able to support the fund, promoting the various different ways that people can give to the fund. That's an important aspect of what we're doing. Obviously, we're encouraging people to make a donation, although that's not a prerequisite of being a friend of the local fund. And there are other more specific things. You can consider setting up your own fund, which the local fund could manage as part of its own activities, or even consider leaving a gift to the fund in a will. So there's lots and lots of different ways in which the friends of the local fund can get involved. But overall, I think the best way to describe that it would be to ask them to be ambassadors, to help us to get all of these messages out to the community, particularly to the business community, because it is an area with high employment, with some very substantial employers, and if we can get them behind the local fund for the Harrogate district, that would be a great step forward.
Yeah, indeed it would. Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, listening to this podcast, you've realised it's more like radio than it is TV. But I can tell you that Geoff has brought in some really helpful publications for me to read, and I will read some of the statistics out. I'm staring at a little brochure called The Vital Signs Report for the Harrogate District, which is put together by the Two Ridings Community Foundation, which of course is one of the partners for the local fund. And some of the facts and figures here are really quite surprising for this area, if we were thinking, and I was jesting before, about Harrogate being such a rich place. But some of the stats are, I'll just read them to you. It says here, against the backdrop of relative affluence across the district, there are pockets of deprivation. There are. It says that there are 8% or 2,100 children living in poverty in Harrogate district. Who would have thought it? This goes on to say here, there's up to 25% of families in some areas of the Harrogate district are struggling financially. Quarter of families struggling financially. I imagine that is about right, and it is a lot. Here, 5,900 households in this area are living in fuel poverty. Apparently that's some of the highest rates in the land, particularly in the areas of High Harrogate, Low Harrogate and Masson. Our population, as the figures point out here, in terms of the sort of loneliness and socialisation, that our population, as most people know, is a little higher, a little older than the rest of the country. But also another one here, which again will resonate with our audience here, is that the average house price in Harrogate is 10.6 times the average salary, which itself is 10% above the national average. So we do have areas of deprivation. We do have also high house prices. I also do know from having the pleasure of working or sort of meeting some of the people from the council that in Harrogate, our average earnings are lower than people would think they would be for jobs in Harrogate, because it's a service sector area. Yes, a lot of people go and worked in London and Leeds and perhaps earn more than average, but those perhaps people who do live in Harrogate do earn below average earnings here. So I do think, I would say you've totally got my support here at the Harrogate podcast for what you're doing. Geoff, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would want to explain to my listeners and stop me rabbiting on about some of these quite frightening statistics?
I think the fundamental point is, how do you get involved? You can get involved by going online. We have a website. You can get involved by becoming one of the friends of the local fund. You can get involved by getting in touch with me. Whichever way you want to get involved, we would welcome you. And because the fund has a really significant challenge facing it, mainly in terms of the social issues that have been identified in Harrogate and the need to generate funds that will support those individuals that are helping people that are suffering from those social issues.
Geoff, you mentioned contact. How do people contact you?
Well, probably the best way is through Twitter. You can get me at Geoff Dunning, simple as that. Or the other alternative is, by all means, ring me or text me on 07979 531 470.
Geoff, thank you. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you for taking a punt on Twitter and contacting us that way. And I encourage anyone else who wants to, got something to say about the Harrogate area, to also take a punt on Twitter, and we will do a podcast if it's interesting, like this one has been. Thank you for your time, Geoff.
It's a pleasure.